When Skylar Monroe bought the crumbling junkyard on the edge of nowhere, people called her crazy. The land was overgrown, the sheds rusted, the smell of oil and old regret hanging thick in the air. But buried beneath decades of scrap and silence was something no one expected. A hidden garage, sealed tight, holding a car so rare it had vanished from history books. What she uncovered would do more than turn heads. It would rewrite one man's legacy and spark a resurrection no one saw coming. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love true stories of second chances, legacies unearthed, and passion-driven restoration, hit that subscribe button, because what Skylar finds next will change everything. The morning Skylar Monroe signed the deed, the wind carried the scent of rust, diesel, and sunburned grass. She stood at the chain-link gate of the old Falcon Ridge junkyard, the for sale sign tilted like a drunk man at a bar, its letters half faded by time. The place hadn't seen a customer in years. Vines clawed up the fencing, the main office roof sagged with water damage, and out in the back lot, rows of skeleton cars sat baking under a Georgia Sunday. Most people would have called it a dump. Skylar saw something else. Or maybe she just needed something to believe in again. She was 29, a welder by trade, with grease under her fingernails and a tiredness in her soul she didn't talk about. Her dad had run a small auto shop until cancer took him, leaving behind a worn-out toolbox, a stack of unpaid bills, and the quiet ache of unfinished dreams. Skylar tried to keep it all going for a while, but the world doesn't wait for grief. She lost the shop 6 months later. The junkyard was all she could afford, and even that was a gamble. But when the real estate agent handed her the keys, her fingers curled around them like they meant something, like maybe this place could still be more than a graveyard. She spent the first 2 days walking the lot with a notebook and a crowbar. Most of the vehicles were past saving. Burned-out husks from the 72nds, bullet-riddled pickups, frames so brittle they crumbled at a touch. But there was beauty in the decay. Chrome still glinting beneath grime, hubcaps half sunken into dirt like forgotten coins. And beyond the main yard, up a ridge of weed-choked ground, there was something odd, a rusted mound of earth with 2 metal doors sticking out like a bunker. No path led to it. No mention in the paperwork. It didn't fit. Curiosity got the better of her. On the 3rd day, with the sun low and shadows long, Skylar hiked up the hill with a pry bar in one hand and a flashlight in the other. The double doors were heavy steel, industrial and half buried. It took 30 minutes to chip away the dirt packed against the hinges. When she finally wedged one door open, a puff of dust burst out like the exhale of something long asleep. She coughed, waving the air clear. Then she shined the flashlight into the darkness and froze. Inside, sheltered beneath a layer of dust but untouched by time, sat the unmistakable curve of a cherry-red fender. Smooth, pristine, impossibly clean. Her breath caught. What the hell? The beam of her flashlight swept across the rest of it wire wheels, side vents, the unmistakable sloped nose of a Ferrari 275 GTB. She blinked, stepped back, looked again. It couldn't be. Not here. Not in this junkyard. But it was. And Skylar Monroe, the girl everyone laughed at for buying a rust farm, had just found the kind of treasure that makes history hold its breath. Skylar didn't sleep that night. She tried. She lay on the old army cot inside the junkyard office, the one she'd dragged in after hauling out 3 raccoons and a pile of moldy seat cushions. But her brain wouldn't slow down. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that car, the lines of it, the impossible glow beneath the dust, the soft curve of engineering genius tucked away like a secret the earth forgot to bury properly. By morning, she was back at the hill with gloves, a crowbar, and a borrowed winch. The doors had only opened part way the night before, the hinges creaking like a warning. Now, with daylight burning off the dew and her heart pounding like a piston, she went to work. She rigged the winch to an old flatbed axle, muttering to herself as she cranked, each groan of steel pushing the door a few more inches open. It took her 3 hours to get them fully unstuck. When she did, the smell of time rolled out oil, Rubber, old metal, and something sweet like mothballs and varnish. The space inside was larger than she'd guessed. Not just a shed. A buried shipping container, reinforced and welded into the hillside, maybe 40 feet long. The Ferrari sat near the far wall like a red ghost in a cathedral of shadows, untouched by the decades that had chewed through everything else. Skylar stepped inside slowly. The air was dry, cool, preserved. She reached out and touched the hood and nearly pulled back. It was cold. Not just metal in the shade cold. Cold like it hadn't been touched by the world above in years. The car was immaculate. No rust. Tires still firm. Glass unbroken. A single layer of dust on the surface, thin enough that a swipe of her glove revealed paint so glossy it looked wet. The yellow prancing horse emblem on the front grille stared back at her like a challenge. She circled it, careful. Every instinct in her said this wasn't just a collector's car. It was a ghost story on wheels. Cars like this don't get lost. They get hidden. The driver's door was locked. She tried the passenger side, no luck. But when she looked closer, something caught her eye. Beneath the driver's side mirror, just behind the chrome trim, was a small indentation, a keyhole. Not standard, not factory. She looked around. On a shelf at the back of the container, near a workbench covered in dusty rags, sat an old toolbox. It was red, dented, and taped shut. Skylar hesitated, then pried it open. Inside were three things: a single ignition key, a Polaroid of the car, parked on a cobbled street beside a man in a white racing suit, and a folded letter. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded but legible. The first line read, "If you've found this car, then you've found what they tried to erase." Skylar sat back on her heels, the letter trembling in her hands. She had come here to rebuild her life with scrap. But now, she had something much bigger. A locked car, a sealed story, and a buried secret that someone had once gone to a lot of trouble to hide. And she had just opened the door to all of it. The letter didn't say who it was from. Just page after page of tight, deliberate handwriting, each sentence weighed down by the kind of urgency that doesn't come from memory but warning. The pages stuck together at the folds, corners brittle, and Skylar unfolded them carefully, like she might accidentally erase the truth if she rushed. The author wrote of betrayal, of a prototype that was never meant to see the light of day. The car, he said, was built in silence, commissioned outside of Ferrari's official channels by a rogue engineer, with dreams of creating a machine that would outperform every model in its class. The name of that engineer had been scrubbed from records, blacklisted, ghosted from history. But the car remained, hidden, preserved, waiting for someone who could finish the story he never got to tell. Skylar looked at the letter, then back at the Ferrari. Her reflection stared at her in the glossy fender, warped slightly by the curve of the metal. She felt small in front of it, not because of the car's size, but the weight of what it meant. She slid the key into the hidden lock near the driver's side mirror. It turned with a satisfying click, like a safe opening. The door creaked when it swung outward, the leather inside faintly scented with age and fuel. The interior was pristine red, stitching across jet black seats, analog dials untouched, even the original shift knob gleaming. It was like time had stopped inside this car. The glove box wasn't locked. Inside was another envelope thicker than the first. This one had a wax seal, cracked and half flaked away. She opened it. More documents. Old blueprints, some bearing Ferrari's original logo, and others marked with a strange symbol she didn't recognize, a triangle over a set of wings. She unfolded a large sheet, labeled GTB divided by X experimental frame, and scanned the notations. The car she'd found wasn't just a limited edition, it was a prototype, a model that had been erased before it had ever officially existed. The pages included a log handwritten engine test results from 1967, a list of custom modifications not found on any known Ferrari model, lightweight alloy specs, a modified intake, bespoke suspension. This wasn't just a showpiece. It was built to run. Skylar leaned back against the cold leather seat and let the silence press in. All her life, she'd chased machines, old ones, broken ones, forgotten ones. Her father used to say, "Some cars just hum different. You'll know when you find one." She never believed him until now. She pulled out her phone, snapped a few photos of the car, the documents, the toolbox, then paused. Something told her not to share them yet. Not with anyone, not even the auto forums she used to scroll late at night. This didn't belong to the world yet, not until she knew what it really was, and why someone had buried it in a junkyard and walked away. She stepped out into the sunlight and looked back at the container. For a moment, it looked like a mouth half buried in the dirt, like the earth had tried to swallow a secret and failed. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just starting. Skylar spent the next 3 days torn between awe and suspicion. She kept the container locked, told no one. Not even Benny, the guy from the scrapyard next door who'd lent her his winch and usually stopped by with a 6-pack and 1,000 questions. She worked in the daylight, clearing brush, organizing rusted parts, pretending she was just another girl, rebuilding her life with broken things. But at night, when the world went quiet and her hands stopped aching, she slipped back to the hillside, flashlight in one hand, notebook in the other, and sat beside the Ferrari like it might speak if she waited long enough. She called it the Red Ghost. It just fit. The way it shimmered under a layer of dust, the way its lines whispered of something forbidden. It didn't feel like a car. It felt like a whisper from a time the world tried to forget. On the 4th night, she opened the hood. It wasn't easy. The latch had seized from time and cold, and it took her 15 minutes. 3 curse words, and a flathead screwdriver to finally pop it loose. When she did, a gasp escaped her lips. The engine was spotless. Polished intake, custom headers, tubing that looked like it had been forged, not bent, no factory stamps, no VIN plate, just a small engraving at the front of the block, X divided by 01R. She scribbled the code in her notebook, heart thudding in her ears. Whatever this car was, it wasn't built for roads. It was built for something else, and it was the first of its kind. She traced her fingers along the intake manifold. "What are you?" she whispered. That night, Skylar couldn't stop researching. She scoured forums, searched registry logs, vintage Ferrari auctions, prototype lists. Whispers of a 275 GTB ghost car had floated through collector circles for decades, a rumored build that was never seen but often speculated, said to be part of a backdoor deal between a rogue engineer and a secret American buyer. But there were no photos, no serials, no proof. Until now, Skylar had that proof, parked in a container behind a dead junkyard, and the longer she stared at it, the more she felt the weight of what it meant. This wasn't just about money or fame. This was about legacy. A story someone had tried to bury literally, and a machine that had waited half a century to be found. And still, something didn't add up. The car was pristine, too pristine. Who buries a treasure in perfect condition? Who hides a prototype and doesn't come back for it? The next morning, Skylar stood at the edge of the hill and looked down at the town. The scrapyard, the worn road, the flat horizon beyond it. She'd always believed machines carried energy, that the ones built with heart held onto the soul of their maker. This one didn't feel abandoned. It felt guarded, and she was about to find out why. The morning came gray and heavy, clouds thick like cement over the hills, casting long shadows over the junkyard. Skylar stood in front of the red Ferrari with the wind at her back, a wrench in one hand, hesitation in the other. She had opened the hood. She had taken photos. She had read the strange first letter, but the glove box still hadn't been touched. Not really. She'd opened it once, sure, just enough to glimpse the envelope inside, but she hadn't pulled it out. Something about it felt final. Like the moment she opened that letter, she'd be past the point of return. Today, She didn't care. The latch clicked open with a sound that felt louder than it should. Inside sat a single envelope, crisp edges despite the decades, sealed with a thin strip of aging adhesive. No name, no address. Just one line in blocky, slanted handwriting. To the one brave enough to dig. Skylar exhaled through her nose. Guess that's me. She cracked the seal and unfolded the letter inside. July 4th, 1971. If this car is found, I have failed. But maybe you haven't. My name is Elias Marone. I was one of the last unsanctioned engineers Ferrari ever hired before the purges. I built things they didn't want built. I pushed the envelope too far. They said I made machines for ghosts too fast, too light, too dangerous. But I knew something the rest of them didn't. I knew perfection wasn't in the numbers. It was in the feel of the drive. This car, the GTB divided by X, was never meant to be registered. It was meant to be hidden. And it was. Until now. They came for it. In 1970, the factory was raided by internal agents pretending to be tax auditors. They scrubbed my records, fired my team, disbanded the project. But I got one car out. Just one. I built it here, on American soil, with help from a man who believed in vision over profit. We stored it, buried it, because we knew if they found it, they'd destroy it, or worse, claim it. If you found this letter, then you've also found her. And you have a choice. Restore her, or reveal her. Just know, one of those choices puts you in their path. Choose wisely. E.M. Skylar read the letter twice. Then, a third time. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. From something else. This wasn't just a prototype. It was a rebellion. She looked up from the page at the Ferrari's dash, those perfect, old-world gauges staring back, like eyes frozen in time. She felt a jolt in her spine, like someone had just whispered in her ear. The original builder was dead. That much was clear. But his ghost wasn't gone. It was in the gears, in the lines, in the silence. And now, it had found her. She didn't know what to do yet. She didn't know how far this rabbit hole went, or who might come knocking if word got out. But one thing was certain. Skylar Monroe wasn't just fixing a car anymore. She was holding a secret the world once tried to kill, and now, somehow, it had chosen her to bring it back. Skylar spent the next few days in a trance, part detective, part mechanic, part archivist. Her world had shrunk to the size of a single machine and the fading paper trail that surrounded it. She worked in silence, ate out of takeout boxes, slept on the cot with blueprints pinned to the ceiling above her head like stars. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that name, Elias Marone. And every time she tried to look him up, she hit a wall. The internet had nothing. No biographies, no patents, no listings in Ferrari's known engineer rosters. It was as if he had been erased completely, exactly as the letter had warned. But Skylar had something better than Google. She had the documents he left behind. The blueprints in the second envelope were brittle but detailed. They weren't just plans, they were ideas. Engine cross-sections with experimental compression ratios, handwritten notes arguing with factory design limitations, custom-built intake schematics. It was like reading the journal of someone obsessed with building the perfect machine not for the market but for art. Tucked among the drawings was another letter, unsigned. This one was more frantic, almost angry in tone. It spoke of a man named Rulani, a Ferrari board member, who had once championed Elias's work, only to betray him when the project got too ambitious. According to the letter, it was Rulani who ordered the destruction of all GTB divided by X records after the car outperformed the company's flagship racer in a private test session. He couldn't afford for the world to see a car built by someone he no longer controlled, the note read. So he buried it. Buried him. Skylar leaned back in her chair, the shop light above buzzing like it might burn out. She stared at the drawings. The car, the open hillside that had guarded it like a tomb, She wasn't a conspiracy theorist. She was a welder. A girl who loved the smell of engine grease and the sound of a clean idle. But she also wasn't stupid. This car had been buried on purpose, and not to protect it from weather. To protect it from people. And those people had likely gotten away with it. For 50 years. Until now. On a hunch, Skylar cross-referenced the name Rulani with a list of early Ferrari board members from the late 60s. One name popped up: Vittorio Rulani, director of special projects from 1966 to 1972. She found a single grainy photo of him shaking hands with Enzo Ferrari himself. She stared at the image, zoomed in, and there, in the background, mostly obscured by shadow, was a car. That car. Same lines. Same fender shape. Same color. Someone had scrubbed the records but not the memories. Skylar's skin crawled. She knew now why Elias Marone had gone dark. Why the car had been hidden. Why everything about the GTB divided by X had been smothered under time and silence. Because it had never been about the car. It had been about control, and a man's refusal to be erased. Skylar looked at the Ferrari again, heart pounding, and for the first time, she understood. She wasn't restoring a car. She was unburying a betrayal. The next clue didn't come from a letter. It came from the back of a photograph. Skylar had almost missed it, the Polaroid from the toolbox. She'd looked at it a dozen times already. A man in a white racing suit, standing beside the Ferrari, chin lifted with the quiet pride of someone who's built something the world doesn't understand yet. The light in the photo was golden. Late afternoon. Behind him, a brick building, with a sign mostly obscured. Just a few visible letters. Cha and Re. She flipped the photo over again, absently, then saw the handwriting. R. Marone, Pasadena. C.A. August. 1970. R. Marone. Skylar's heart skipped. Elias had mentioned help. Someone who believed in his work. An unnamed man who helped get the GTB divided by X to American soil. This had to be him. R. Marone. Family. A brother. A cousin. Or a son? She got to work. Every public record. Every archive. She dug through real estate listings, old phone books, and DMV databases like she was chasing a ghost across a chessboard. Finally, on an old online obituary site, she found something that cracked the silence open. Roberto Elias Marone, 1944. 2007, survived by his son Julian. Julian Marone. Alive. Listed as a mechanical engineer based in Arizona. Skylar sat back in her chair and whispered to herself, "You're real." She didn't waste time. That night, she wrote an email. Simple, direct, honest. "Hi, Julian. You don't know me, but I believe I've uncovered something that belonged to your grandfather. A car, a prototype, and a story. If this email reaches you, I hope you'll respond. I have photos, letters, and I think you deserve to see them. Skylar Monroe." She hit send. The next morning there was a reply. "Skylar, if this is a prank, it's a cruel one. If it's not, then you've found something that's haunted my family for half a century. I'll be on the road tonight. You have no idea what this means, Julian." He arrived 2 days later, in a dusty rental car, wearing jeans, a navy polo, and the kind of expression that hadn't known peace in a long time. When Skylar led him up to the buried container and pulled the doors open, he stopped cold. His hands went to his mouth. His knees bent slightly, like the ground had just shifted under him. "I thought it was a myth," he whispered. "My dad, he used to talk about it like a dream." Inside the car, nothing had changed. When Julian stepped inside the container, he walked straight to the front bumper, dropped to one knee, and traced the emblem with his thumb. "My grandfather disappeared when my father was 17. Just vanished," he said. "No note, no body, no explanation. Only thing left was a stack of blueprints, a single photo, and the same story every year on my birthday." Skylar stood beside him. quiet, listening. He said Elias was a genius, but dangerous to people who wanted to control ideas. They buried him because they couldn't buy him. Julian looked up at her, eyes wet. And now you've unburied him. For the first time since she'd opened that rusted hill, Skylar didn't feel alone in the story. She had an ally now. Someone who understood that this wasn't about money or rarity or making headlines. This was about justice, about memory, about a man who vanished into silence and left behind a machine that still whispered his name. Skylar nodded toward the car. I want to restore it. Not just mechanically, truthfully. Julian nodded slowly. Then let's do it together. They didn't waste time. By the end of the week, Skylar had cleared out the lower level of the junkyard office and turned it into a temporary workshop. Julian brought down his old drafting board, a relic from his days at Caltech, and tacked up every blueprint they had. Together, they sketched timelines, ordered parts from obscure suppliers, and worked into the night under buzzing fluorescent lights and the hum of a space heater that barely kept the chill off their bones. But it wasn't just about turning wrenches, not this time. Every bolt they loosened was a step closer to rebuilding not just the GTB divided by X, but the legacy that came with it. The car had sat sealed underground for more than 50 years, but remarkably, most of it was intact. The seals were dry, the fluids long evaporated, but the frame was untouched by rot. It was as if the world had tried to forget it, but time had chosen to preserve it instead. They started with the heart. The V12 engine, an original Colombo block, custom modified, was the crown jewel. Julian knew it by feel. My dad used to describe this engine in stories, he said one night as he gently turned the crankshaft with a breaker bar. Said it was lighter, meaner. Said it growled like a dragon when it ran. Skylar grinned. Well, let's wake the dragon. Every evening, people started to notice the changes. Benny from the neighboring yard offered an old engine stand. A girl named Tamsin, who ran the tire shop down the road, showed up with a stack of gaskets and an offer to help paint. It didn't take long before the restoration began to attract attention and questions. But Skylar kept things quiet. No social media, no press, just word of mouth. This car doesn't want fame, she told Julian one night, wiping sweat from her brow. It wants peace, but peace doesn't last forever. About 2 weeks into the restoration, a black SUV pulled up to the gate. Skylar was under the chassis, wrench in hand, when Julian's voice called out, "We've got company!" A man in a suit stepped out, late 50s. Crisp shoes. No name offered, just a business card pressed through the fence. Giancarlo Rulani. Skylar's blood ran cold. A descendant of that Rulani. I understand you've uncovered something of historical interest, he said calmly, eyes scanning the lot like a man searching for evidence in plain sight. I represent an organization with a vested interest in maintaining Ferrari's narrative integrity. Julian stepped forward. It's not your story anymore. Giancarlo didn't flinch. Be careful who you decide to believe, Mr. Marone. Some stories are buried for a reason. Then he got back into his car and left no threat, no direct warning. But Skylar felt it all the same. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about control, about who got to tell the story and who had the courage to finish it. Later that night, Skylar stood alone in the garage, staring at the ghostly red shape beneath the drop cloth. They'd made a pact, to restore it, to finish what Elias started. But now the stakes had changed. It wasn't just about restoration, it was about resistance, and Skylar was all in. By spring, the red ghost had a heartbeat. The V12 engine purred for the first time in 54 years. Its sound low and throat deep, like a memory surfacing from the ocean floor. Skylar and Julian stood shoulder to shoulder that morning as the garage filled with smoke and heat and awe. She didn't cry. Not quite, but her hands trembled on the throttle, and Julian's voice cracked when he whispered, "He'd have wanted to hear this." The car wasn't just restored, it was transformed. Piece by piece, they had honored Elias's vision, using every blueprint, every handwritten note, every oddball part he'd hidden in the documents. Even the paint, a deep crimson with a metallic sheen, matched the swatch taped to the back of Elias's final design notes. Julian had mixed it himself. They called the color maroon red. News of the project had trickled out. Whether it was Benny's fault or Tamsin's shop talk, Skylar didn't know, but the calls started coming. Collectors, journalists, engineers, people who claimed to know the car, others who threatened legal action if it was ever shown in public. But one call stood out. The Monaco Revival Auto Expo, an invitation, only event for the rarest restorations on Earth. It was a long shot. Julian doubted it was safe, but Skylar didn't blink. "He buried this car to protect it," she said. "We're not hiding it again. Not now." Julian nodded. "Then let's make them remember." The expo was scheduled for June. They had 4 weeks. The final push was brutal. Long nights. Parts overnighted from obscure corners of Europe. A custom crate had to be welded for the journey overseas. Skylar didn't sleep for 3 days straight before the shipment. When the truck finally pulled away, carrying the red ghost like a knight in armor headed for war, she stood in the dust and whispered, "Now go tell them." Monaco was another world. White tents and champagne flutes, billionaire collectors and museum curators. But amidst the carbon fiber supercars and polished antiques, the GTB divided by X gleamed like something ancient and holy. It didn't shout. It stood, silent, red, alive. On the morning of the reveal, Skylar adjusted her jacket and stepped onto the small stage beside the car. Julian stood nearby, hands folded, face unreadable. The announcer introduced the project, a one-of-one Ferrari prototype, buried for over 5 decades, now brought back to life by a girl with a junkyard and a dream. Skylar stepped to the mic. She didn't have a speech, just truth. This car was never supposed to exist. And yet, here it is. Because one man believed in building something honest. And because some stories, no matter how hard you try to bury them, find their way back. A hush fell over the crowd. Then, applause slow at first, then rising like thunder rolling in from the sea. And in the back row, standing with arms folded and jaw tight, was Giancarlo Rulani, watching, silent. Skylar met his gaze, didn't look away. She had done it, not just resurrected a machine. She had resurrected truth, and now the world couldn't unsee it. They called it the Ghost of Monaco. Photos flooded social media within hours. The crimson curves of the GTB divided by X, parked beneath gold light, its reflections dancing across showroom floors, museum pages, engineering blogs. But more than the car, it was the story that spread. About a lost engineer, a silenced dream, a junkyard girl with grease under her nails who refused to let it stay buried. Skylar didn't bask in the spotlight. She never had. She returned home 3 days after the expo, tucked back into her shop with a tired heart and a full spirit. The world was louder now. Sure. Her inbox overflowed. Offers came in to sell the car, to license the story, to appear on talk shows. But she ignored most of them. Because the thing she'd set out to build? It wasn't a platform. It was peace. Julian stayed a while longer. They worked side by side, restoring another car he'd found in his family's storage. An old Lancia coupe that hadn't run in 20 years. It wasn't special. Not in the same way. But it was honest work. And honest work was enough. Sometimes, late at night, they'd sit outside the container, now turned into a showroom of sorts, where the GTB divided by X rested under soft lights. Skylar had added a small plaque beneath the car. Elias Monroe, 1921, 197, presumed. Builder of silence, whisperer of machines. The road remembered you. Visitors came in quietly. Most didn't say much. Just stood there, stared at the red finish, and left notes in the metal tins Skylar had bolted to the wall. Thank you. I didn't know stories like this existed. You gave my father hope. But one letter stood out. It arrived by mail, unmarked, handwritten in a curling script. You've undone what decades tried to erase. The world won't forget again. M. Skylar folded the note, tucked it into the glove box, and locked it. She didn't need to know who M was. Some things are meant to be left as they are, like echoes you can feel but never trace. By summer, the junkyard was no longer just rust and weeds. People brought their own stories, their own projects. Skylar started a small workshop series, just like her father had once dreamed. Teaching kids how to build with their hands, how to listen to the hum beneath the metal. And on the day the one-year anniversary came around, she opened the garage doors early, rolled the GTB divided by X out into the morning light, and drove it. Not for press, not for ceremony, just for drive. The engine was smooth, the wheel warm in her hands. She took the long road that curved through the hills, past the town cemetery, past her father's old shop, past the places where stories lived without needing to be told. At the ridge above town, she pulled over, parked, watched the sunrise, and in that stillness surrounded by wind, by trees, by memory, she finally understood. The GTB, divided by X, wasn't just a car. It was proof that dreams, no matter how long buried, no matter how violently silenced, still breathe. That truth has weight. That legacies, when unearthed with care and courage, can change not just the past, but the people brave enough to remember it. Skylar closed her eyes, smiled, and whispered, "We did it, Elias." Then she turned the key and let the road carry the story forward.